Yeah. No, no, we got to talk about this. What's up, guys? This is the Gospel According to Mark with a C. He is I, and I am he. Just taking some time to tell you exactly what's on my mind. Thank you for joining me once again, my friends. I hope all is well with you. Guys, let me know if you've heard about this story. I just heard about this maybe like yesterday, but apparently Ubisoft, or is it Ubisoft, whatever, Ubisoft was coming out with a new Assassin's Creed game. This was the plan. Someone came up with this concept that they were going to do an Assassin's Creed game based on a former slave who is chasing down the Ku Klux Klan during the Reconstruction era after the Civil War. Okay. And they squashed it. They squashed it. Why would they have done this, guys? I don't know because, guys, for years, I've been talking about how we need more honesty in our games that feature black people, or not just games, but movies, TV shows, things like that. It seems like we're stuck in this void where all we can do is be race swapped with previously well established traditional white characters, right? Or in this case, since we're talking about Assassin's Creed, you guys know it wasn't that long ago when the whole world got a big old belly laugh at the thought of a black samurai. Suki. I know I'm pronouncing that wrong, but anyway, everyone got a big laugh because that Assassin's Creed Shadows game was featuring a black samurai, and everybody was like, "Yeah, right, there were no black samurais." And of course, the mayhem ensued. People got defensive, people got offensive, right? So we went back and forth the same way we always do, and now we find ourselves today, right? Because that like went over with a big thud. But today, I get word that our good friends at Ubisoft were planning on doing another Assassin's Creed game based on what I was talking about. Now, guys, let me read a little bit about what this is all about. All right, let's talk about this because I got some thoughts, guys, and you guys can tell me how you feel about this, okay? So, this is on PCGamer.com, and it says Ubisoft reportedly canceled an Assassin's Creed game set around the American Civil War because of backlash and political turmoil in the US. Backlash and political turmoil in the US. This is what it's come to. The game developers are scared. The content creators are scared. And I'm talking about the ones that make the movies and the TV shows. They're scared to do the things that actually should come naturally. They'd rather, it just goes to show you how out of touch these people are. The game was meant to take place, I should say, primarily during the Reconstruction era and would have featured a black assassin confronting the emergence of the Ku Klux Klan. Ooh. All right, they got a picture of Yasuki there for some reason. But it goes on to say a new game. Well, all right, let's skip down to here. The game was apparently going to tell the story of a formerly enslaved black man who, after moving west to start a new life, is recruited by the Assassin Brotherhood. Following that, he would return to the U.S. South, coming into conflict with groups including the emerging Ku Klux Klan, the white supremacist hate group that continues to operate today. Bro, why? See, this is the shit right there, right? They had to put that part in there. So for everybody else out there, all of the people out there with the woke radar, just waiting, just standing there. Remember in Spider-Man when he's like waiting, listening to the radio, waiting for something to happen so he could go. These people who are just waiting for the next woke thing to happen, they're out there and they love sentences like that. Uh, yeah, so he would return to the U.S. South, coming into conflict with groups, including the emerging Ku Klux Klan. You should have left it right there. But it goes on to say the white supremacist hate group that continues to operate today. Bro, where they at? I'm not saying they're not out there, but they're not out there to any consequence. I like to think. You know what I mean? But listen, they're not marching up and down the streets like they used to. You're not seeing people get hung and burned all the time and all that stuff. Back then, that was a thing. You know what I mean? Where it was like blatant, right? I'm not going to have the argument that they exist or don't exist, but I'm saying back then it was a lot different. We've come a long way. You understand what I'm saying? But they want to say that the white supremacist hate group that continues to operate today. The game was in the concept phase and years away from release when the cancellation occurred, but work was reportedly underway. Now, it says here while some of the game was meant to take place during the Civil War itself, the bulk of it would have been set during the Reconstruction era, the decade plus that immediately followed. While Reconstruction was intended to address matters like granting citizenship to former slaves and reintegrating former Confederate states into a restored United States, the process faced furious and often violent resistance from whites in the South, which ultimately undermined it. Reconstruction was formally ended in 1877, leading to a resurgence of white supremacy or racism and violent repression and disenfranchisement of blacks in the American South. It is, in other words, an intensely fraught topic in the U.S., a point driven home by the reaction to Yasuki in Assassin's Creed Shadow, which was ugly, to put it mildly. No, that's because it was in question whether or not Yasuki was an actual historical figure, whether or not there was really a black samurai. Okay, we know for a fact that there were black slaves. It is not at all the same. Okay, so there's no need to be afraid of American history. But unfortunately, this is where we are. We live in a country where, and I made videos about this a long time ago, where people want to shudder at the very sight of the Confederate flag. They want to tear down statues of Confederate soldiers and any remembrance of that whatsoever. And I said at the time, you can't deny American history. It is what it is, but you can take comfort in knowing that you live in the very same country that had those things, that went on to outlaw those things. You know what I mean? It's a 1-2 punch. Yes, we had slavery. Yes, we had atrocities that didn't just stop at black people, by the way. But since that's what we're talking about, let's keep it there, right? The atrocities done on to black people. But we have a hard time. We have a hard time confronting that and accepting that because we stopped there instead of what happened subsequently that outlawed that got us past that got us through the civil rights movement, that got us through voting rights and all of those things that we did as a country together. But for some reason, the very hint of it is something that we just can't handle. Bro, how many movies have we seen where people are killing Nazis? You know what I mean? Quentin Tarantino, I'll get back to him in a minute. Quentin Tarantino, he did, what was that? No, it wasn't The Hateful Eight. It was Inglorious Bastards, right? Where Brad Pitt was always talking about, we kill Nazis. We're going to kill Nazis. Indiana Jones got to say, Nazis. I hate these guys, right? But we can't handle our history here in this country where we can say that we hate the Ku Klux Klan. Why? Because somebody's great 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 grandfather might have been underneath the hood, which reminds me, in the game, I'm sure it would just be hooded characters, right? Because that's what the Ku Klux Klan were. They very rarely showed their faces, especially when they were doing the kind of things that they were doing. So I don't see what the issue would have been. Actually, when I was talking about Quentin Tarantino, I see this in the same vein as I saw the Django Unchained, right? I loved the Django Unchained. Django, the D is silent. I love Django Unchained, right? It was a brand new way to tell the story of a former slave without all the wade in the water. My ball, he whipped me, ball, so he whipped me. You know, there was something more empowering and endearing about Django Unchained. It was raw. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, it took a white man to put a spin on that topic, which made it totally fresh, totally brand new, and also empowering. Guys, I don't understand why this should have to be a big thing. I would have played that game. I would have wanted that game. Assassin's Creed, based on a former slave who is recruited, comes back to the South, and goes after the Ku Klux Klan. It's a timepiece. It's not like he came to 2025 and is out here indiscriminately killing white people. That's not what we're talking about here, But if that's what it is, it just goes to show what I've always talked about, how we're going backwards. Because it was only 2009, for example, when we all sat down to play Resident Evil 5. Who remembers Resident Evil 5? My God, I had a good time playing that game. And you know what we did in that game? We shot up a bunch of African zombies. Yes, yes, some of you might remember. Tell me if this rings a bell, right? Like there they were. There they were, guys. All right. And they were all types of it was bananas. It was crazy. Let me rephrase that. But back then, okay, I'm sure there were some people who were like, damn, we just walking around, just this is what we doing now. We just gonna shoot up a bunch of black people. But they were zombies. They were zombies in Africa. Of course, you're gonna if you were in China, you were gonna be shooting up Chinese zombies. Bruce Springsteen to go and kill the yellow man. I was born in the USA. I was born in the USA. I was, yes. So anyway, this is how touchy we've become. But man, this concept would have been dope. I hope that it gets revisited. This is something that actually I would like to see. I think we could do it. Well, maybe not now because, like I said, we're all just as sensitive as we can be now. It's all about wokeness, and if it's not about wokeness, it's people on the other side being extra sensitive about it because America just has this ongoing unresolved issue with race, with slavery. You know what I mean? And it's going to be the death of us, I swear to God, man, because if it's not us tearing each other apart, it's other people manipulating it to tear us apart, And this is where we are. These are things that we used to understand. I keep on saying this, guys. But anyway, uh, let's see. Let me just finish this up. It says, in other words, an intensely fraught topic in the U.S., a point driven home by the reaction to Yasuke in Assassin's Creed Shadows, which was ugly, to put it mildly. That reaction also exposed the soft underbelly of Ubisoft leadership in response to noise from the worst corners of gamedom. CEO Yves Guillemot said in September 2024 that our goal is not to push any specific agenda, bullshit, and that its intent is simply to make games for fans and players that everyone can enjoy. Ironically, the people who actually make those games seem less reticent about standing up for themselves and their work, but they're not the ones who make the final decision about what does and what does not get made. All right, so anyway, it goes on. Maybe I'll leave the link to this in the pinned comment below. But the point is, guys, is that we had this game that, if you ask me, would have been probably one of the most honest depictions that you can put. But this is where we are, bro. It's like either they're misplacing us or they're afraid of our actual history. Like, it's sad, bro, because if that's the way it's going to be, we'll never get representation. We'll never get it, bro. I know that it's not pretty. It's ugly, what happened, slavery and everything like that, but it is a part of American history. Guys, if we can do movies about World War I, World War II, the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, then we should be able to dive into the ugly truths about what happened, the way it happened, and we can fictionalize it. We can rise up heroes from it. Magneto comes from Nazi Germany backstory. You know what I mean? And he's an epic villain. He's an epic character. We can't be afraid to touch on these things, man. But that's just my opinion. Let me know how you feel about this idea of an Assassin's Creed video game that is set in the Civil War Reconstruction era of the United States, where this black assassin is hunting down the Ku Klux Klan. What do you think about that, guys? Is it something that scares you? Does it threaten you as a white person, as a black person, as anybody else? Get in the comment section and let me know. As always, guys, you can like, you can share, you can subscribe, you can do what you want to do and live in color. All right, guys, that's it. Thank you for putting up with me. I'll catch you on the next one. This is the gospel according to Mark with a C. Rock on. Think my dinner's burning.